Vivienne Westwood, along with her then partner Malcolm McLaren, played a crucial role in dressing and shaping the punk movement, including the iconic fashions of the Sex Pistols, one of the most influential punk rock bands. In the mid-1970s, Vivienne Westwood and McLaren operated a clothing store called Sex on King's Road in London. The store became a hub for the emerging punk scene.
Hello, Mr. Numo. What do you actually say?
Clothes. Cardigans you can see through, like little woolies.
These restrict your arm movements somewhat.
So you're really caught right down there in bondage.
Yes, but to move in that has a lot of style and flair, because as you move, you can sort of see through some of the when you wear this,
yes,
you can see sort of a body here with bits of lacy stuff in between. It really does.
Shouldn't that suit me?
Yes, but I think I should have the tweedy one really if you did.
Yes.
But then apart.
Also a country one. Yeah.
This is the kind of thing that I'm wearing, but in black and in a tartan.
Tartan's nice. Is that any particular tartan?
Yes, it's ancient MacDonald.
Gosh, I bet those McDonald's of years back didn't think you were going to end up like this. Who else well-known comes in here?
Rudolf Nureyev bought some very nice things once. He bought one of these anarchy shirts.
Did he?
And a pair of very tight plastic trousers which we were selling at the time, and he was constantly going around doing a plie in the whole thing. You really felt good.
Well, what's actually wrong with what I'm wearing?
Mate, you look so bloody boring, I cannot believe it.
I agree with you, yes.
It's a question of how you feel. The point is to change yourself.
I didn't want to be a fashion designer at all. I did it to help a boyfriend that I had whose name was Malcolm McLaren. Malcolm started to work on this group, the Sex Pistols, but we started in fashion together before that, and I started fashion to help him. I didn't want to do it.
We sort of got into the whole punk leather bondage scene, and it was kind of like the Link set from King's Cross in Sydney, It was this kind of sadomasochistic kind of weird garb.
Wonderful costume designer Norma Morris. She did Crocodile Dundee. She did so many other iconic Australian characters. And she lived not far from an S&M leather place that she'd have to walk past every day to walk to work. And she'd go in and she'd talk to the leather makers there. And they had studs. They had those chaps with the bottom cut out, which Wes wore, and basically that was Norma.
So we did have a sense that we were working on something that was kind of different for the time, and when people saw it was, like, whoa, this is different, it's weird, it's, why is the Mohawk guy got a blonde-haired boy with a chain around his neck on the bike, and why is he carrying a baseball bat? What is that about? It just left a lot of questions up there and created this kind of weird netherworld atmosphere of post-apocalyptic kind of dry gulchness that, I don't know, where the lawlessness was possible. They created a real world, and it was, that's George and Terry, they do that.
Wes, who was his sort of surrogate and very, very central to the story, Vern Wells had been in the theatre. He'd very, very nice person, the opposite of his character, a crazy man.
I went up, and when George explained to me the character, I said, you might as well fly me back home, because I can't do it. There's no way I can do that character. It just is not who I am. I can't get those emotions to come out for you. And he said, yeah, okay, fine, whatever. Just go away and let them do their makeup and wardrobe thing. So they took me, and they actually put me in the full wardrobe, shaved my head, did the full makeup on me without letting me see a mirror. And they did this whole thing, and then they sent me back to George. And George had a full-length mirror on the wall of his office, and I walked in, and he looked up from his desk with his glasses down. He goes, yeah, I think it works. Yeah. Turn around. So I turned around, and there I was, full frame in the mirror, and I just went, pop. And it was like, that was the character, and it was like so simple from that moment on. It was like it was staring at me in the face. He was a brilliant man. He understood the psychology because of where he came from being a doctor and everything. He understood the psychology of how to make you realize your potential. And I think if he hadn't done that, I would not be here. I never would have done the film.
Joe was sent to Georgia Championship Wrestling as a solo at first. How did the team come about? How was he put with Hawk? Was that a suggestion of yours, a suggestion of Ole's?
It was Ole Anderson put the whole thing together. They originally were going to be a tag team of Hawk and Rick Rude. They had pictures taken and everything, and Ole said, no, you and you are going to be a team, and you are going to go in as singles. Ole put that together, and then they got together in New Orleans with Bill Watts.
Ole Anderson shoots on the creation of the Road Warriors. Of course, it's based off the movie The Road Warrior. The first movie was called Mad Max. The second movie was called The Road Warrior. And of course, it's based off this particular character, Wes, with the face paint, the mohawk, and the shoulder pads. Obviously, it goes without saying for anybody that's seen the movie back in 1981 and the Road Warriors debuting back in 1983. Here you see them with, of course, Paul Ellering and Jake the Snake Roberts as the Legion of Doom. Here you see the Road Warriors with Rick Rude.
I went to see a movie. It was called The Road Warriors. That was back in the 80s, early 80s, 81, whatever it was, 82. 81, I guess it was. And I'd seen the movie, and I would never do that. I mean, the way I worked, that's BS. But I got to thinking, and I said, you know what, maybe there's something I could do to get a tag team, because I was thinking tag team. And I called a guy that I knew up in Minneapolis, Eddie Sharkey, who was an old-timer, never made any money. And he'd been around wrestling for 1,000 years. And I said, can you get a couple of guys up there, pretty good-sized kids, look good, pretty fair athletes, and I want to line some guys up, if you will, for me, and then I want to pick 2 guys out. He said, yeah. So he called me up. He says, I'm going to have about 15, 16 guys. They all work at Grandma B's restaurant. They're all bouncers. Pretty tough kids. Some of them are fair athletes at one time, high school football, track wrestling maybe. So come on up here and take a look at them, like 15, 16 guys. So I came up to look at them. They were all lined up like this. And I shook the hands of the first one. The guy says, oh yeah, I watch you all the time, Ole Anderson, boy, I just watch you, you're so wonderful. Second guy, Ole Anderson, boy, I tell you what, yeah, when I watch you, you really were. Third guy, Ole Anderson, boy, you really are great. The 10th guy was Mike Hickstrand. He said, you don't look too damn tough to me. I said, uh-huh. I left, got done with all, and I went back to Eddie Sharkey and I said, one guy I really want. That's the guy that gave me that shit, you don't look too tough to me, and that was Mike Hickstrand.
Right.
He said, okay. I said, well, I got to have another guy. And the other guy I'd already used before, Joel... Laurinaitis.
Yeah.
So Mike Hickstrand was the reason that I took the both of them, because they were both buddies and all that kind of crap. So I said, I'm going to make you into a team, and I'm going to call you the Road Warriors. They went, oh, what the hell are you talking about? I said, just goddamn listen to me and just shut the hell up. I said, I got to have a manager for you. And I had a kid that was working for me at that time, Paul Ellering. I wasn't doing nothing with Paul. There was nothing to do with Paul. He was just under the bottom matches, and that was it. So I went to Paul and I said, Paul, I want you to be. It's either do what I say, or I'm going to have to let you go. Well, he says, okay. He needed to work. He never made any money in this business. He says, yeah, what do you want? I said, I want you to be the manager of the Road Warriors. You seen that movie, Mel Gibson and all that crap? I don't know if you'd seen it or not.
Yeah, Mad Max.
Huh?
It was Mad Max, I think. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
What are you talking about?
Well, it was the Road Warriors, but I think the movie was actually called Mad Max.
No.
No, there was an actual Road Warriors?
I think the movie name was Road Warriors.
I thought it was Mad Max. But go ahead, it doesn't matter. I know what exactly you're talking
about.
No,
but I think it was Road Warriors.
Okay.
The first one I think was Road Warriors.
Okay.
Had to be. I would never know that. I don't know nothing about Mad Max.
Right.
But anyway, so I said, you be the manager, the Road Warriors, and these are guys that be the Road Warriors. Okay, and they went, that ain't going to work. But what I did is I put them in the ring on TV, and I had them work maybe 2 or 3 minutes. Don't beat the shit out of the guy. My deal is always this. If you hit a guy 42 times in the face, something ought to be wrong with that face.
Right.
The guy either ought to be dead, or he sure should have been falling down a long time ago. So how can you hit a guy 42 times in the face? You can't. So I tried to tell him, I said, listen, if you are finally going to go throw that one punch, just throw one punch, and let that guy sell the hell out of them, one punch. And then you beat the guy. That's it.
Right.
And that's what we did. And they got over like a son of a gun.
When they came to you with the idea in the 80s to work with these two, what was that transition like going from being in the ring to going and becoming a manager?
Well, I was already managing. I think I had Buzz Sawyer, and I don't know, there were so many that came through. At one time I managed, I'd go out every match on the card. Every match I'd be going to the ring. And I had ruptured my patella tendon. Took about 6 months off. And then Ole called me up and said, you ready to get back to work? And I said, well, I guess I am, you know. And go back to Atlanta and had a couple matches on TV right away. And he says, you know, you're kind of favoring it a little bit. Maybe we should just back off a little bit. He said, you're really good on the mic. You ever think about managing? I had a premonition dream that I was going to be a wrestling manager one day. And I said, well, I'll think about it. And I thought about it, and I said, yeah, I'll give it a try. And he says, well, be careful, because once you get stigmatized as a manager, you know, it's hard to get back to being a wrestler again, because everybody thinks of you as manager. And I didn't have to think anymore. I just said, yeah, let's do it.
What do you remember about first crossing paths with Mike and Joe when you got here?
Well, I met him at the bar at the hotel. Imagine that. And we got along pretty good. And immediately we started riding together.
Mm-hmm.
So the table was set there. It's pretty funny to think about both of them getting in my Trans Am.
Holy shit.
But that's what we did. Three of us got in that Trans Am and we went places, man. We went all over Georgia. Well, we were just down there, man, and we got tired of living in that hotel. And, you know, every week we had to pack our stuff into boxes and store them at the hotel. And then we'd go on the road, you know, for a week.
Ooh, man.
Then when we come back, we'd have to unpack our boxes again. Yeah, it was really hard. And so I believe the first time I moved in with Joe, and that lasted, I think, about, I don't know, 4 or 5 months. And no, it didn't. It lasted about 3 or 4 months. And then after that, Jerry Briscoe had a condo that he wanted to sublet. And I sublet the condo from him. So once I did that, Hawk moved in with me. And we had some great, great times, man.
Yeah, rumor and innuendo has it that you and Animal, maybe not exactly birds of the same feather, but
No.
but you and Hawk a little bit closer in personality.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It was back with Georgia Championship Wrestling.
Okay.
I lived with Jake Roberts. And boy, was it one of the most interesting 6 months of my life.
He said actually a few times that that guitar shop in Honky Tonk Man caused his drug addiction that he developed in later years. Did you ever notice if he partook in anything?
Well, what was the cause of it 10 years before that? I mean, Jake, listen, since the time I knew Jake was a party guy. When we lived together, he was a party guy. Because he and Hawk would go out partying together. And I knew that for a fact. Back in 1983, they were partying together. Well, Jake and I were living together until Nikita came down and stayed with us. And then Jake went and lived with Hawk. Because they lied to do the same thing. So, yeah, man, he didn't start drinking and doing all that stuff because of honky tonk. He may have stepped it up a gear, but he was doing stuff before.
Oh, yeah.
Was Nikita Koloff living with you guys as well?
He did it one time.
Okay.
So did Rick Rude.
Jake, did you ever hear the story about how Matt Bourne's dismissal led straight to the opportunity for the Road Warriors?
Oh, no, I didn't. Let me know.
Apparently, Bourne was arrested because allegedly he had a girlfriend who is underage, and that led to his dismissal from the territory. So, troubled man, to be sure.
Ole intended to, using Arn as one of the Anderson family and Matt Bourne, their team, they were going to be the Georgia Tag Team Champions or the National Tag Team Champions, whatever their title was called at that time, and they were going to be pushed as the top heel team. Until Matt Bourne has the cops coming looking for him at TV on charges of, I don't know what the charge was, so I'm not going to slander anybody, but let's just say improper conduct with a female who was not 18 years old. Immediately, as happened in wrestling in those days when, you know, the pre-internet days and all that shit, when everybody wasn't smart, nobody knew whose real name was what or how to find people, Matt Bourne left the territory. And fucking poor Arn Anderson is sitting there going, it was just why there was heat to the very last between them, because that was going to be Arn's first career break. And he thought he pretty much just got fucked out. He definitely got fucked out of being the top heel team and the tag team champions. And he thought he got fucked out of a career there. Fortunately, he hung around long enough and it wasn't his fault.
And that's when he went to Southeastern.
Yes. And as a matter of fact, it had just happened because when in the summer of '83, when Dundee and me and the Bobby Fulton, Terry Taylor, all those guys went down to work for Ole in the summer of '83, it had just happened right before we had gotten there. And that's when they had brought the Road Warriors in, because Ole, all of a sudden, that's where the Road Warriors come in. He needs a top heel tag team. He's got nobody. He had plans for these guys. He wasn't going to get rid of them. He's got nobody scheduled to come in. He's got to make up a heel team from somewhere, which is where he went back and visited Eddie Sharkey and brought in the Road Warriors. And so there now Arn is seeing the Road Warriors getting over on national TV, and he's in the first match. Then only lucky they didn't even take the Anderson name away from him. But if not for Matt Bourne getting in trouble with underage diddling or whatever, there would have been no Road Warriors. Because nobody was knocking on their door at that time saying, hey, please, guys, come work for me. Remember, they were both out of the business back bouncing in Minneapolis.
Yeah, because Animal had a very brief run where they brought him in as the Road Warrior, all in denim. And then Road Warrior Hawk was wrestling, was it Vancouver? He was doing local stuff
Crusher
there.
Von Haig.
That's right.
Crusher Von Haig. He'd never. Joe had been briefly to Atlanta and worked a couple shots for Crockett just underneath, as you said, as the Road Warrior. And Hawk had gone to Vancouver and said, well, this fucking sucks and I'm making no money, and went back to Minneapolis. I don't know that any other promoter would have even known to ask Eddie Sharkey about him. And they weren't actively at that point in wrestling. It was like Ole went and said, hey, the big guy, I had before, maybe you got somebody else with him or whatever. Yeah, well, look at this guy. Oh, shit. And they had to kind of be talked into coming back down and doing it, because Joe was telling Mike, I went down there and I made shit, like $200 a week. No, it's going to be different this time.
Yeah, wasn't the story that Rick Rude was actually originally going to be what we would now call Hawk?
I think he may have been a partner, at least, if not Hawk.
In a few words what the Demolition gimmick is. And a lot of people are going to hear me ask that and say, oh, it was a Road Warrior ripoff. But it was a little different. But it was certainly after the Road Warriors. And we'll address the Road Warrior thing in a minute. But first, how would you describe it?
I think if you were going to describe Demolition, they were just two big, tough guys that kind of demolished all of their opponents. And they were rough and tough. And a very rugged tag team. I think that's the best way to describe them.
Catch me up a little bit about, and I'm fascinated by this because I didn't see it until later. Obviously, I was a kid, but they kind of look a little bit like,
S&M character?
Yeah. So where does that come about? Does anybody, Do you remember that kind of being the talk in the back amongst the boys? As a kid, of course, I didn't know what the hell that was.
Demolition and the whole outlook, yeah, a little bit dominatrix-ish if you're into that sort of thing.
You know, I feel like sooner or later we're just going to have to talk about it. In your opinion, and I know you've talked about this a lot on the show in the past, but some people are probably listening to this episode first. You've always been of the belief that Demolition is not a ripoff of the Road Warriors. Sell us on that. A lot of people are just of the opinion that Vince tried to sign the Road Warriors, and I guess I should ask that first. Do you know for sure that the Road Warriors received an offer and had a conversation and had a meeting with Vince at his house for a deal before Demolition debuted?
I don't know because I wasn't there. I'd always heard that Vince was interested in the Road Warriors. And what's his name? Collie had this idea for Demolition, and Vince went with Demolition. I also remember a meeting after I got there with the Road Warriors and Vince. And I don't even know if they met in person or not, but I do remember getting the phone call and being with Vince where he said, we're going full steam ahead with Demolition and Powers of Pain. Because the Road Warriors decided that they were not going to come in. And I want to say that was sometime late 1987, early 1988.
I want to go back to the beginning. We're talking about 1987. Both of you gentlemen already had established wrestling careers. Of course, Bill as the Masked Superstar, and Smash Barry Darsow as Crusher Khrushchev. Now, to bring fans up to speed, the understanding that's out there is that the gimmick was actually created by the man known as Moondog Rex, Randy Colley, and it was originally supposed to just be Bill Eadie and Randy Colley. Bill, can you tell us how that process came to be?
Well, Randy had approached me with the idea, and like you had mentioned, I was already in there as a Masked Superstar, and I thought that the characters that he brought up would work. They were based on, I think it was a Mad Max series.
Yeah, Lord Humongous, I believe.
One of the first episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And the look was good, but he hadn't honed the look completely. For example, he had fur boots and he had a fur mask on the wrestler itself.
Mm-hmm.
Tweaked the outfits. And when he presented it, I told him, I said, I'm not real sure about this. I think because it was his presentation,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to step on his toes. Well, when he agreed to tweak a little bit, and I suggested maybe changing no cloth mask or fur mask, put paint on, he liked that. We both agreed that the fur boots weren't going to work. We got the motorcycle boot look, sort of right out of the movie.
Yeah.
And the cross holder was out of the movie as well. Out of that, what was the name of the guy?
I believe it was Lord Humongous in the
Lord
movie.
Humongous, yeah. So then we switched and added that as our entrance ring mask.
Mm-hmm.
And we tweaked a little bit of the jackets and the entrance, this and that. There was no music at the time. And I get confused. I don't know if the first match was Meadowlands or Hershey, but it was one of those two. And then it was Meadowlands or Hershey. Well, when we came to the ring, the reaction of the fans was very, very positive.
Mm-hmm.
When they introduced us, of course, we took the masks off. They had no reference point with me because I was under the Masked Superstar before, so there was no facial features. And as soon as Randy took his exterior mask off, even behind the paint, everybody started saying Moondog, Moondog.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't against Randy, but he had been in there as a tag team champions, so definitely they recognized him. That was the first night. We had our match, come back, and I told him, I said, well, a lot of people recognize him. He admitted that they did. So the next night, the same thing happened. So when we got back to the dressing room, I told Randy, I said, the character's going to work, but it's not going to work with you taking part in it.
Yeah.
You brought it up. It's your baby. I'm going to Japan anyway. I'll step aside. And he said, no, you're right. It's not going to work with me. I'll step aside.
Wow.
So and I appreciated that from him, because little did we know how much it was going to take off.
Yeah. And it's amazing to hear about such an act of selflessness from the guy who essentially created the gimmick, but he believed in it so much.
You came back to the WWE in the mid 80s as an enhancement talent. How did that come about?
Well, I was supposed to start it back as another character. And maybe some people recognized me. And I kind of got scrapped from that character, and I got replaced. So instead of having the spot that I wanted, it was either you take what I got here,
right,
or not. So
okay. How did things change in the locker room from the time you were there before to that time period? Was the locker room different?
Yeah, everybody was getting tired, more irritable. Not as friendly toward one another. You just get beat down and beat to death after a while. The road catches up with you and different things.
Why do you think you never got a push at that time?
At the time, I was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. I had opportunities to stay in Japan, and I turned that down to come back to New York because I thought that I was going to do one character. And then I had a call from Dusty Rhodes was doing really good in Charlotte, and that's when Charlotte territory was really doing good, and I turned that down because of New York. And then at this time you're pretty much burning bridges to get back here.
Right.
But I knew what was going to be with this new character, and then when everything fell through on it, I didn't have any more bridges to cross.
How did you come up with Demolition?
I wanted the outfit that would kind of fit my body.
Okay.
Because I look more like a gorilla than a bodybuilder, and I wanted it started out to be more like like the old executioners that you've seen in the, like the medieval times. They was not, they didn't look like a bodybuilder, but they was, kind of big brutes, and so that was pretty much it. And it just kind of put little pieces together here and there.
What was Vince's reaction when you approached him with the idea?
Well, I had asked him about it, and he said, I'll be at the office Saturday. And I took my day off, and he was off. And I drove up there. And I told the girl that was the secretary, and I said, don't want you to be scared, but I got to go put this outfit on. And I said, it looks pretty bad, but I want Vince to see it. And I had the outfit on, and he walked, as soon as he walked in, he seen the outfit, and he seen me standing there wearing it. And he went, oh yeah. He said, but we got to find you a partner. A partner?
Another partner.
Yeah, and Bill Eadie was a good guy, but I was thinking what all had happened with Sailor White, and I was thinking, oh man, maybe not a partner, but it turned out good. Bill had some obligations in Japan. If it is just like the roll of the dice. The reason I got replaced because there's like 4 guys that go in this area to all the matches, and they was chanting Moondog. So, and you could hear it over the TV when we was in the ring, Moondog, Moondog, Moondog. If it would have been the next taping session was in Tampa, Florida, if it would have just been bumped to that next session, nobody knew me in Tampa.
Right.
Nobody knew me in Texas. Nobody knew me in California.
But the East Coast.
But right here in this area, when we started, the first night was the Meadowlands. The next night was Hershey Park, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And the same people went to both matches and sat there and was chanting. And I told them about it. You know, I met them, and they was really good wrestling fans, and they didn't mean anything bad by it. When I was in WCW, finishing up on my way out, we was going to do the Dead-Eye Dick thing,
Right.
and making the videos for that. I said, you don't realize what you cost, you know, and they and they were just like, kind of like heartbroken, like, man, we didn't mean to do that. I said, no, you know how it is. I hated them for a while for doing it,
Right.
but they was just good wrestling fans. They
Right.
was just, they paid their money. They said, oh, we know who that is. And so that's just the way it worked out.
So who chose? Did you choose Bill Eadie, or did Vince choose Bill Eadie?
Vince chose Bill Eadie. Yeah.
Did you like Johnny V as a manager?
Yeah, he was okay. He'd had a good spot and a good run, and then they didn't, you know, it was kind of time to finish up. It's time to finish up and go.
Right.
And he wasn't one of them that was going to go anywhere. He just wanted to stay here, and they didn't have anything, so he ended up in a situation he had to take what was available.
Right.
And he was a little bitter about it, I think. But, you know, when it's time to go, you either go or take what they offer you.
Right.
So,
What were your thoughts on Bill Eadie?
I knew Bill for a long time. I knew him when he was doing different characters. And from Georgia, from the Carolinas.
Right.
And very nice guy, very smart. He was a big boy. Good shape, so, and he was very good in the ring. So I was really happy about that part.
So when you got cut from the group, it was basically because of that instance with the fans.
Yeah.
Okay. How did you find out?
Oh, they called me on the phone. I was getting ready. I was waiting on my ticket to go to Tampa, and they called and said, you know, they recognize you. We got to replace you. And send the outfit.
Did you feel betrayed since you were the one that came up with the...
Yeah.
Was it hard showing up for work, watching Demolition get all the success while you were stuck in the opening matches?
Yes.
Did you threaten a lawsuit with Vince?
No, not threatened him. We got all that worked out, but it was like once you get replaced, there's no. It was just a bad situation.
So that you didn't wind up suing him, or you did?
I don't think I can talk about that.
Okay.
So.
Okay, no problem. Were you afraid you'd be blackballed?
Well, I didn't work very much after that.
So after it all, do you regret it?
Yeah.
You brought it up. It's your baby. I'm going to Japan anyway. I'll step aside. And he said, no, you're right. It's not going to work with me. I'll step aside.
Wow.
So and I appreciated that from him, because little did we know how much it was going to take off.
Yeah. And it's amazing to hear about such an act of selflessness from the guy who essentially created the gimmick, but he believed in it so much.
Did you feel betrayed since you were the one that came up with the...
Yeah.
And he realized that, you know, just the timing was off with fans recognizing him. Now, keep in mind, back in those days, there's no internet. You know, your only real connection to the insides of professional wrestling, or if you're reading the dirt sheets, or maybe a little bit of the after mags back in those days. But, you know, the fans really knew they couldn't be insulted. And so now that leaves way for a new tag team partner to join in. And,
well, before that, I'll tell you what had transpired. we talked to Vince, and Vince had agreed because he saw the reaction. He was at TV.
Mhm.
Both of those shows were TV shows, and he agreed. He said that the characters were going to be strong characters, and he wanted to push them, but they weren't going to work with Randy.
Yeah.
And he said, "We need you another partner for you." Well, immediately then, he made a suggestion of about 4 guys that were already in the territory. And I told him, I said, "Vince, the same thing's going to happen to them. I've never brought up those guys. Barry knows them, but I've never brought up those guys because it wasn't an insult to them. I just didn't think it was going to work. It wasn't going to work with 2 of them in particular. They had already been there for about 4 or 5 years. So the same thing was going to happen. In the meantime, I have a commitment to go back to Japan. And I told Vince I was going to fulfill my commitment, go to Japan. And when I got back, then he had already approached and spoke with Barry.
And then I was in Ricky Steamboat's gym, and I was training at Ricky's gym, and Ricky says, "I heard you quit. I heard you walked out on Crockett, laughing and everything." And he said, "You want me to call Vince?" I said, "Shoot, yeah." So he says, "Just a minute." He goes in the back and he calls Vince right there when I'm there. He says, "Vince, I got Barry Darso here. He wants to come up and work for you. He's a hell of a hand." Vince says, "Well, tell him I'll give him a call." So now I'm thinking, yeah, right. So the next morning, all of a sudden the phone rings. It's Vince McMahon. He says, Vince McMahon is, he says, "I'd like to talk to you, Barry. Can you come up to Connecticut?" So he had a plane for me the next day. A limo picked me up, brought me to the office, and he showed me all these pictures. Now, I didn't know anything about the Demolition. I didn't know Bill or Randy were doing any of this. And then we got to talking, and he says, "How would you like to be partners with Bill Eadie?" I said, "Well, yeah, definitely, because I knew Bill as a mass superstar. I was a big mass superstar mark,
Yeah.
And I thought, if Bill's going to be my partner, this is going to be something.
Absolutely.
This wasn't just a startup tag team because, with Bill being the veteran here. So I said, definitely. And he says, Bill? I said, well, I met him, once or twice, but, don't really know him. But my friends know him. He knows my friends, kind of deal. So he says, well, I can't guarantee you that job. I'll guarantee that I'm going to hire you for something, but I need to talk to Bill first. So I don't know, Bill, was it like a week or 2 later or something when you got back to Japan?
I believe so, yeah.
That's when we met, and we just said, yeah, let's do it. And it ended up being the Demolition. And still, I didn't know it was Randy Cawley that started this until after we had a match or 2. Then Randy was there, and then Bill says, yeah, Randy was the one that was my partner before. And, that's when I found out everything about it.
Vince's excuse was, hey, we got one warrior here. We got the modern day warrior going to come in with Kerry Von Erich. And so we don't want to have too many warriors for marketing purposes. And, Hawk and I are going, okay, really? Come on. But, hey, we had the Legion of Doom name anyway. We Drew Paul Ellering, who's going to be on today, said, hey, man, let's copyright this name and let's make it ours. And we did. And, that to us, Tony Schiavone or whoever would announce Paul Ellering presents from the Legion of Doom, Animal and Hawk the Road Warrior. So it was a name we used throughout the first 10 years anyway. Right. So it really didn't make any difference to us.
Were you surprised they didn't give you guys more of a run with Demolition?
Yeah, we all 4 of us were disappointed. We came in there, and of course, they were the original knockoffs of Hawk and I, that everybody thought. Again, Hawk and I didn't care. They were both our buddies, man, but we didn't care about any of that. But yeah, and Barry Darso and I talked about it. I said, oh man, I can't wait for you to come in. Because our school, because Barry was another one of those Robbinsdale, Minnesota guys, we all called each other Billy.
Right.
Our names were Billy. He says, Billy Joe, can't wait for you to come in at WWF, man. We're going to have a great run. They had us the first match, beat them in 8 minutes.
Yeah.
Now where do you go? Now it's done.
Right.
Nowhere to go. A couple matches after that, we screwed them out of the belts with the Hart Foundation. didn't even tag us up with the Hart Foundation to fight Demolition. It was just like all over with.
Right.
Done.
When you talk about you weren't, you had no animosity towards Demolition, obviously, because you respected the boys who were carrying out that gimmick.
Yeah, it's not the boys' fault.
Right, exactly. But the Office obviously was ripping off the Road Warriors.
Oh, well, listen, they made Demolition right after Hawk and I said no to a first contract.
So you see that for the first time.
Oh,
and
yeah.
what do you and Hawk think?
Well, guys in the locker room come say to us, hey, man, you see WWF's Road Warriors?
Right.
And they called it Demolition.
Right.
I said, oh, yeah, well, there you go. To be honest, I liked the hockey mask with the black
Sure.
spikes. Yeah, I liked it.
Did Hawk flip out?
No, neither one of us slipped out. I mean,
Right.
I knew both those guys, so
Right.
we knew it wasn't their idea.
Right, but I mean more at the office, or was it
Well,
just
we
it
thought-
was just business is business?
You know what we thought? All right, assholes, we're going to show you.
Right.
We just continued to sell out with Flair and the Horsemen and the Midnight, and it wasn't hurting us in the least. We were still selling a lot of crap merchandise, and it wasn't like our phone wasn't ringing for to come in there too. Don't think it wasn't, because
Right.
it was, And so let Demolition go. And Ellering told us, someday you'll go up there, guys, and you'll get to wrestle Demolition, and the people will make the decision. And as soon as they played our music to go up against Demolition, it was like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
The LOD chants started happening, and it was easy match
Right.
off the bat. And we all knew each other, so it made it easier. Yet it wasn't like four strangers getting in the ring.
Right.
When I wrestled Bill, like I said, the masked superstar. Barry was Crusher Khrushchev, and himself Barry Darso. So it wasn't like I didn't wrestle with Barry. I went to camp with Barry.
Right.
So we all knew each other. So it was an easy match, and we all got along.
With Legion of Doom teaming up with the Ultimate Warrior. So we have all the Warriors here, the former Road Warriors and the Ultimate Warrior, taking on Demolition. And there's a lot of face paint here.
When you look at this and you look at the level of talent in it and where all of these talent were at different stages of their careers, from Warrior to LOD to Demolition, even when you break them down to Bill Eadie, Masked Superstar, Crusher Khrushchev, Barry Darso, and then there was Crush. But you look at the magnitude of the talent that was in this match, and it was pretty fucking impressive.
We've always been fascinated as fans while we never got Demolition and Road Warriors it feels like that should have been a major pay-per-view match. Of course it wasn't, but it does happen here on Saturday night's main event on NBC. As far as a conversation with Vince, do you recall any conversation with him about any sort of correlation between the two gimmicks?
No, not really, ever. Now, obviously, there were a lot of comparisons with Powers of Pain. Yes.
Let's hear what that sounds like.
Well, it's just you look at the Powers of Pain and you look at the Road Warriors. They looked alike. They were both big bodybuilder teams. Demolition, neither one of those guys were bodybuilders. They didn't have that big look, and they were more of a working team, whereas the Road Warriors and Powers of Pain were more of a kicking and stomping and punching team. It wasn't that there were differences, and big enough differences that I didn't compare them. I mean, I really didn't. I see where people do because of the face paint.
Well, and the spikes, and I realize that the spikes are certainly different. And one wears shoulder pads and one doesn't. But the black leather, the spikes, the face paint, I could see how a lot of people would make that correlation.
And I can see how people would make that correlation as well. Then the bell rang.
First one with Sting was, I remember he and Warrior were together down, I forget what they called them, man.
Blade Runners.
Blade Runners down in UWF, right? I think it was.
Yeah.
With Watts. And Warrior had just left, and then we knew they were copying our gimmick. It was two muscle guys coming up trying to follow Hawk and I. It was cool. They did kind of like frilly type paint. We were all black and red and white, except I'm in Philly. I got the Flyers colors on today.
Right.
But, and then Warrior went to WWF. Okay, Sting was left by himself, and I tell you what a great guy Jim Crockett. A lot of people don't like Jimmy Crockett. Jimmy Crockett came to me and said, listen, he goes, you ever heard of this Sting guy? One of the painted guys down at UWF? I said, yeah, I've seen him. He goes, the blonde hair, right? He goes, yeah. I said, we're thinking about bringing him in, but we want to know what you think because we don't want to interrupt your marketing or anything else because we let Jimmy keep all our marketing stuff. We just came in for the guaranteed contract. He let him keep all the marketing money, which was a big mistake. We should have kept that too. But I said, you know what? Let me think about it. And so I thought about it the rest of the night. I said, you know, Jimmy, bring Sting in. We'll call him a brother in paint, and we'll let him do six mans with Hawk and I. So that's what they did. If you remember, for a while, he was six-man partners with Hawk and I for a while, and then Dusty, after he got over in the NWA, then Dusty moved him off with Flair. Then he was off and running.
That's a huge rub to give to somebody. Like, did you
know?
Yeah,
we didn't rub with anybody.
Right.
The only one person we ever tagged with at the time was Dusty.
Right.
He
Did
was
you
our
know
sixth
his
man
personality beforehand?
Didn't even know who he was.
So it was just a blind.
I never met him before.
It was just a blind rub.
The only other story I ever heard of Sting was when Dick Slater shoved his head in the toilet or something.
Right.
For Dark Journey.
Yeah, for Dark Journey thing, right?
Yeah.
That's the only time I ever heard of a guy named Sting. I said, really? I thought it was a singer. I didn't even know what his name was, to be quite honest with you. Because, Watts wasn't on cable TV yet or none of that, so we never saw those guys. And we were on TBS and in Atlanta. We never heard, and Ole would send us into Watts to help Watts out. I didn't know what Sting was.